Great stuff. All right. Welcome to the Carbon Literacy Shareable courses for the cultural sector launch event. It's really wonderful to see so many of you here today to learn about this new set of tools and resources that you can use to deliver carbon literacy in your cultural sector organization. My name is Jack Rose Worden. I am the Cultural Sector Coordinator and one of the Sector Advocacy Leads at the Carbon Literacy Project. I'm going to be facilitating today's webinar alongside my colleague Phoebe, who is our Cultural Sector Officer, and Sojan, who is our Housing Coordinator. This webinar is scheduled to run. Oh, sorry about that. This webinar is scheduled to run until 12:30 p.m. and it is going to be recorded, so you will be able to rewatch it if you want to forward it on to anyone else, or there's something that you missed. It will be recorded, and we'll be sending out the link to everyone afterwards. There's no chat function, so please, if you've got any questions, use the Q&A function, and we'll be answering those questions throughout. And we're also going to have a segment at the end where we will be going through a few Q&A questions with our panel. We've got a really jam-packed agenda. We're going to be talking about what carbon literacy actually is. So if you're brand new to carbon literacy, we will be covering that. We're also then going to be introducing the 6 fantastic new cultural sector shareable courses and how you can use them. And then we're going to be having a panel with 6 fantastic panelists who have very kindly come along to explore the origins of the courses with us, the benefits and impacts of the courses, and talk about the course contents as well. And all of those panelists are people that have either been directly involved with the development of those courses, or they're actually using them already in their organizations. We'll then be covering how to access a shareable course, and then we'll wrap up with a Q&A segment and some final bits and bobs at the end to wrap up. So, firstly, if you're brand new to the world of carbon literacy, what actually is carbon literacy? What are we talking about? Carbon literacy is essentially a day's worth of climate learning and action. If you've already done your training, you'll know how this day works. But ultimately, the idea is that it equips people with the knowledge and skills they need to make really meaningful carbon reduction action in their organization generally, or perhaps in a community group, or within an educational environment. So the idea is that people come away feeling more confident and they can actually have some tools that they can use in their workplaces. We are a low carbon culture change project, the Carbon Literacy Project, and we are globally unique. There isn't really anyone else that's doing something just like we're doing. And we're based in Manchester, but carbon literacy training is being delivered across the world at this point because of our sort of framework allows for that. So carbon literacy is being delivered in 37 different countries across 7 different continents, including Antarctica. And it's aimed at 3 distinct audiences. So people who are in communities, people in their workplaces, and people in places of study. So this is allowing us to capture all audiences and basically upskill at this point 121,000 citizens, which is the new figure that I found out that we've reached last week. So the reach is really growing and it's growing really rapidly as well. So this is a really amazing time to get on board. So as a charity, we don't actually offer any training ourselves. We're not a training provider. Instead, we can be better understood as the advocates for the carbon literacy model and our framework. So we are advocating for carbon literacy training on a local through to a global scale. And for organizations that are interested in this work, we provide guidance. So we help people on the process of accessing carbon literacy training. And we also act as the accreditation body. So we accredit individuals, we accredit groups, and we also accredit organizations as carbon literate. And we also accredit all carbon literacy courses. So if a course has got carbon literacy in the title, then we have assessed that course and made sure it meets our carbon literacy standard, which is essentially our flexible framework that we use. And lastly, we also produce materials and we work with other organizations to produce materials which can be used within sectors. And that's what we're here to talk about today, these shareable courses fall within that bracket. So, how does the training actually work? Carbon literacy is always 1 day's worth of learning, and this gives people enough time to really understand the concepts around carbon emissions, around climate change, impacts, causes, and solutions, and come away with some tangible understanding and skills that they can actually take into their workplaces. And carbon literacy is generally delivered internally, so that's within organizations, staff delivering to their colleagues, but it can also be delivered with the help of an external trainer. But it's always delivered using courses that we accredit. So whether it's a staff member or a group of staff members delivering to their colleagues, or whether the trainer is from external and they're using a carbon literacy course, in all circumstances, that course meets our carbon literacy standard. We always encourage peer-to-peer delivery of carbon literacy training. So that's with basically people who understand the sector that they're delivering into need to be the ones that are delivering the training. And that makes sure that there is maximum relevance and the real issues are being contended with in the training. And carbon literacy, if you've done your carbon literacy training, you will know that carbon literacy training always ends with action. So learners create two actions at the end of their training that they pledge to undertake that will reduce the carbon footprint of their organization and themselves within that organization. And upon successfully doing so, we will provide a carbon literacy certificate to that individual. So they will be a carbon literate person. So, why carbon literacy? Why are cultural organizations, especially, undertaking carbon literacy training? There's loads of different reasons, but these are some of just the biggest ones that I come across in my role as cultural sector coordinator. One of the biggest ones is around creating awareness. So, obviously, in the cultural sector, there is a lot of challenges being faced in terms of engaging with governmental regulations, in terms of creating resilience to the actual impacts of climate change. And having everybody in an organization on the same page around why climate change is happening and what can be done about it can be really valuable to a cultural sector organization in addressing those challenges. If you don't have everyone on the same page, it's really hard to move forward. Carbon literacy training also provides people with the actual practical tools and a space to actually come together and think of solutions and best practices and do a lot of sharing essentially across departments and across organizations sometimes as well. So people come away with really tangible tools that they can take into their workplace. And there are also quite a lot of co-benefits of reducing emissions. So carbon literacy training can help you reduce emissions. And the co-benefits of reducing emissions can be as varied as positive stakeholder and audience responses. So you might have seen the Act Green survey, which said that a massive percentage of audiences actually expect cultural sector organizations to be acting on climate change. And so if you're doing so, that can have a really positive impact on the way that audience respond to your institution. And also financial savings. If an organization is reducing their emissions through perhaps reducing their consumption, that can then also have financial saving benefits. And then lastly, something else that I hear a lot is around employee well-being. So climate anxiety is obviously a really massive issue. This is a really scary topic, or it can be for some people especially. And having an outlet like carbon literacy training within an organization can really boost feelings of agency, um, around confidence. You know, people come away having had conversations around climate change in ways that they probably haven't had before, at work especially. And also, they come away having created two actions which they have pledged to undertake, which provides feelings of agency. And ultimately, it's a really engaging and fun experience in lots of ways, especially towards the end of the session when things start to feel, more positive and solutions focused. I'm now going to talk a little bit about what a shareable course actually is. Um, a shareable course is essentially a ready-to-use carbon literacy course that has been designed for a whole sector by or with sector organizations. And that's, an organization that understands the sector and has been able to create something that they know will be useful for everyone else in their sector. And the idea is that they contain everything that you would need to deliver a carbon literacy course within your organization. But obviously, not every organization in a specific sector is the same. And so, one of the key elements of shareable courses is that they are customizable, meaning that you can add case studies that are more relevant to your specific organization, or you can add geographical, sort of local relevant information to make it really relevant to the people in their actual day-to-day lives. But ultimately, they are delivered broadly as is, meaning that you don't have to do loads and loads of work. You just have to do a little bit of work to really tailor it to your organization and customize it a little bit. And they are generally designed to be delivered internally peer-to-peer, which was what I was sort of explaining earlier, which is that a colleague, a staff member or a group of staff members use these courses to deliver carbon literacy training to the rest of their colleagues or perhaps, another organization that they're linked with. But if you wanted to, and you have this somebody that could do this for you, you can engage a carbon literacy trainer from externally who can deliver one of these courses for you. But the ultimate idea is that a shareable course for a sector makes the delivery of relevant, really sector specific and tailored carbon literacy training easier, cheaper, and faster because you don't need to go and create something from scratch and go through. Essentially, you don't need to reinvent the wheel. So I now just want to mention a project called the Roots and Branches Project, which you might have heard of if you work with museums and galleries. The Roots and Branches project is an ongoing collaboration with Museum Development North, Manchester Museum, and the Carbon Literacy Project that had a couple of aims. One of them was to create a environmental and social co-working hub at at Manchester Museum. And the branches of the project was to create something called the Museum's Toolkit, which again you might have come across. But the Museum's Toolkit is essentially a resource that's used in a very similar way to the shareable courses that we are introducing today. And some of the courses that we're going to be talking about, including the archives, heritage, and library shareable courses, are actually sort of built upon the Museum's Toolkit work. And some of the other courses as well have elements of the Museum's Toolkit due to the way that they were produced. So this has been an influential and really successful piece of work. And we've been given a video from Alison Criddle, who was the project lead at Museum Development North and who spent the last probably 3 years delivering this resource and then sharing it with organizations in the museums and galleries sector who've been using it internally, much like the shareable courses would be used. And Alison's actually prepared a little bit of feedback for us about some of the impacts of the course and some of the responses that they've actually had. So I'm now going to pass over to my colleague Razvan, who's going to share this video for us.
So this is very much just a brief list. There are many other actions within it, but just some examples of some of the climate actions that participants have created and pledged to and are undertaking within their organisations. So some of them have been around indirect actions, so maybe doing some research and some learning to go deeper to find out more about some of their environmental skills and to develop them through potential CPD opportunities or through resources that we share throughout the training. Developing green partnerships, so some really, really great examples of local authority museums connecting up with their local authorities to drive decarbonisation and net zero strategies, to foster new relationships across different cultural organisations or place-based actions, having conversations with funders and suppliers, for example. Developing organisational strategies or reviewing and going back to and enhancing environmental policy statements and developing them into action plans. Really fostering relationships between organisations and really identifying where each individual staff member or volunteer or colleague might have opportunity to have agency and to help to make that culture shift and culture change within an organisation or partnership. Some people have been taking really direct actions where they have the power to do so. So it might be around data, measuring, monitoring, and reducing carbon, taking steps to make those reductions. Some people have thought, right, I can do this too, and they've become carbon literacy trainers themselves. Some with different specialisms are focusing on collections care and management, so marrying up that relationship between care and custodianship of collections within museums and what that means to care for people and for planet. All sorts of work around procurement and consumption, so not just thinking about waste, but everything that is coming into the organisation, taking circular economy approaches, again, potentially engaging with local suppliers and place-based options and initiatives, really thinking about the different emissions scopes, so scopes 1, 2 and 3, and a focus on transport, particularly where we've got distinctions between urban and rural museums and organisations, thinking about how we go about doing our work and how we do that in relationship to one another. Perhaps it might be around exhibitions, designs, touring, loans, etc. Energy, which is a huge area of emissions impacts all across our sectors. So really thinking about what is being created, where the bills are being paid, what that means in relation to investments and finance, for example, as well. Our design, our materials, our waste management, our waste hierarchies, retail and commercial offerings as well, and hireable spaces, and what it means and what we stand for as organisations, and what it is that we are offering to our visitors and audiences, whilst also thinking about what it is that we represent in terms of our environmental responsibility, values and commitments. Looking at buildings and estates and what that means as an approach that has decarbonisation in mind, as well as thinking about future preparedness and risk and resilience, as well as organisations. And really thinking as well where others maybe are volunteers within organisations and really generously give a number of hours a week to support in the work of the museum, where they might also have opportunity to take actions forward within their personal lives or other aspects of their lives within their communities as well. So a whole host of different ways that we can say that we can see direct or indirect actions being taken to help to reduce carbon impacts. Just a few little highlights of participant feedback here. I won't read all of them, but just drawing on a couple of them, but perhaps the one that maybe we need most of all right now and will continue to need as we keep kind of going with this long work that we're here in it for the long haul, is hope. So somebody saying that they're completely inspired and in admiration of all the museums and organisations that have worked on reducing their carbon emissions. I feel as though a chain reaction has begun and I'm excited to be a part of it. And one thing we talk about throughout the carbon literacy training and will be familiar to some of you is that idea of the ripple effect, or who we connect with, how we interact with and intersect with other people. So Roots and Branches as a project, we really hope exemplifies what is possible for the arts and cultural sector as a replicable model. The whole purpose of the toolkit and with carbon literacy training is that it's a peer-to-peer model. It's about that connectivity, and that really speaks to the values of our sector and what we do. Our USP is not to try to save the planet by ourselves, it's how we do it through connection and how we support one another to do so. So really being able to share that opportunity is really exciting, and the whole point of the work that we're doing, increasing those opportunities to learn and respond to the demand as well, and also enabling other museums and other organisations to access and to adapt the toolkit to create future courses. So some of them are launching here today, and it's so exciting being able to have those points of connectivity and really deepening those collaborations and relationships between the different areas of not just the museums and heritage sector but the wider cultural sector, and how others from wider place-based communities and other parts of our networks around us are really tapping into the knowledge that we have and the generosity of spirit of the sector to be able to try to share that work and go deeper and think differently as well, and taking different approaches and creative approaches to taking climate action. And really being able to have that capacity to keep the toolkit relevant. So it can often feel that climate isn't necessarily changing around us, and it can feel really, really disheartening when we look at the news headlines, but we know that lots is changing, a lot is happening around us, and how we can keep building in those changes, those brilliant case studies, those insights that we get from organisations who go through the training to help keep it live and relevant and help to scale still have scalable opportunities that we could share with others.
Brilliant stuff. So hopefully you can see some of the fantastic work that's come out of the museum's toolkit, the way that people have been creating actions that cover a absolutely massive variety of different areas within a museum or gallery or in any cultural organization. So that's some of the things that people are coming away from carbon literacy thinking about, and hopefully is a testament to how these shareable courses will be used in the cultural sector. So I now want to introduce the six actual cultural sector shareable courses that are being launched here today and just who's produced them. So the theatre shareable course has been produced by Bristol Old Vic Theatre. The Heritage shareable course has been produced by Historic England with some support from Historic Buildings and Places. The Public Leisure and Culture Trusts course has been developed by Community Leisure UK. The Libraries shareable course has been developed by the National Library of Scotland. The GMAST course for Greater Manchester Cultural Sector Organisations has been developed by GMAST. And the Archives shareable course has been developed by the National Archives. Just want to quickly cover what's included in the courses, and then we're going to move on to our panel and introduce all of our panelists. So, what is included in a shareable course? First and foremost, there is a slide deck, which is the information that the learner sees, and then there is really detailed trainer guidance for all of those slides, so you can really easily deliver the materials. And then there are activities to keep the training really relevant and engaging. And then there are options to customize to put in that local specification or that organization specific specification. And then there's a bunch of other stuff as well, like evidence forms for your learners, which just make the shareable course a complete package that allows you to deliver carbon literacy training really easily. And just a few points on sort of the delivery, the way that they are delivered. So like all carbon literacy courses, the shareable courses are 1 day's worth of learning. They're split into different modules, which allows you to sort of deliver, not necessarily on 1 day, you've got a customized schedule. You can deliver over 2 days or over 3 days, for example. And they can be delivered online or in person as well. Now, I want to introduce our six fantastic panelists who have very kindly come along to talk about their work. So we've got Helen Wilson, who is Sector Development Manager at the National Archives, who's been spearheading the development of the Archives shareable course. We have Jennifer Houghton. I'm going to butcher that. Sorry, Helen. Sorry, Jen. Sorry. Head of Policy and Strategic Partnerships at Community Leisure UK, who's been spearheading the development of the Community Leisure UK shareable course. We have Lara Quinney, who's Maps Reading Room Manager at the National Library of Scotland, who's been leading on the development of the Library shareable course. We have Tally Smith from Natling Playhouse, who is Sustainability Officer, and who has actually been delivering the Bristol Old Vic shareable course alongside other colleagues. We have Sarah Russo from the Historic England, who is Sector Resilience and Skills Support Officer, who has been leading on the development and dissemination of the Historic England Heritage shareable course. And we have Simon Curtis as well, who is Director of GMAST and has been pushing the GMAST shareable course ahead. So thank you all so much for being here. It's really wonderful that you've come along to share your insight with the group. My first question is for Simon. Simon, you're obviously very ingrained in the cultural sector in Manchester, and I'm wondering why carbon literacy for the cultural sector? Like, why is it important?
Yeah, is ingrained a way of saying old, Jack.
Absolutely.
I think kind of the cultural sector is an amazing collision of all kinds of things. It's about ideas and stories and science and thinking and feeling, and cultural organisations generally bring together a lot of very different people. And my history is theatre, and it takes a huge amount, unsurprising amount of different skills to make a theatre show happen. culture's got this really unique place in our civic life in terms of bringing people together in all parts of our community. And organizations are often kind of values driven, and we've got this brilliant way to kind of advocate and demonstrate and help understand, help our community understand. Carbon literacy has been part of our story for about a decade, and what it's really brilliant at are some of the things I think Jack's already covered. That kind of shared understanding of where we are in time as kind of relates to climate change and carbon, but also kind of really explore what those kind of what's underpinning all of that. The narrative has evolved over the years, and I think exploring kind of the convergence of climate change is something that culture is brilliant to do. It's there to kind of mobilize the team and kind of co-create action, and then also kind of what we've done is create a syllabus that's place specific. So it's about the combined authority here, 10 districts of which Manchester is one, and responding to our local targets. So going all the way from Paris Agreement down to kind of what the combined authority is saying, and the city. So kind of it's a really great way to kind of look and explore kind of in your specific organisation and your specific role what you can do, and really focus in on kind of environmental matters, to make sure that kind of environment and climate change doesn't get lost in all the other things that climate change, all the other things that cultural organisations need to do.
Great stuff. Yeah, I really agree with you there, especially around the idea of the cultural sector as an avenue for sort of talking around climate change, and then having something like carbon literacy sort of be the vehicle getting your organization comfortable around climate change so that you can then do that stuff and allow yourself to really confidently talk about climate change and carbon emissions in your work and as an outlet for that kind of thing. So yeah, thanks, Simon. Jen, my next question is for you, and it's around sort of shareable courses specifically. Why are shareable courses, or this kind of sort of devolved model of carbon literacy training, what do you think that kind of brings? What kind of benefits might that have?
Yeah, thanks, Jack. I think what is true for all shareable courses that we'll be hearing about today is that it will be very specific to your part of the cultural sector. So, for example, we're a membership association. So, we used our existing knowledge and expertise of supporting charitable, public culture and leisure organizations. And it will be similar to all organizations on this call. They've used their own expertise for their part of the sector. And in our case, we also asked a couple of our members to help review the content of the course before submitting it for certification, just to make sure that it really is relevant for Culture Trust. And that, of course, makes it more relevant to the organizations, and it makes it easier than designing a course from scratch. So, in our case, what that will do is our course is unique to charities and social enterprises that manage public culture facilities and also leisure, but we're talking culture specifically today. So, we wanted to make sure that as charities, as social enterprises, that carbon literacy is in line with their organization's values and way of operating. And we wanted to make sure that the course showed that, and kind of similar to what Simon was saying as well, allowing organizations and staff members who go onto the course to actually see, us taking climate action is very much in line with what we're already doing as a charitable organization. We actually, there's a history here that we can use. So how we've done that in our course is, we've very specifically aligned climate action with charitable objectives, but also with local authority net zero targets. Local authorities are your partner as a charitable organization working in public culture. So really, we're looking at it from a collaborative point of view, but also looking at actually what are some of the core funders' expectations for charities. So, for example, looking at the Arts Councils, Creative Scotland, the National Lottery as well. If you're asking for funding from them, actually there's some expectations there, and we're looking at best practice and key knowledge from across the cultural sector. So we've included things like, key emission sources and activities from across the public cultural sector. But we've also looked at national initiatives like the Theatre Green Book and research from the Audience Agency and make sure that we incorporate that as well. So I think with all of the shareable courses, organizations are then able to add in their own examples, as you just introduced, Jack, but then they can see their own work in the wider context of the cultural sector. And I think that is incredibly valuable. And I think the final thing I wanted to say on this is that for our courses in particular, we've really listened to feedback from our members about how it is very difficult to take 8 hours out of a staff's working schedule to go on this training, especially for frontline staff. So what we've been doing now is actually we've been giving advice to our members and anyone interested in the course on how to deliver the training flexibly by doing some online, in-person, blended approaches to delivering training. And specifically, our course is 4 core modules, and that each of those modules don't last longer than 2 hours to deliver. So we're working with organizations to say, actually, these are your staff schedules. This is what the course is like. And this is a way to deliver the training flexibly so that everyone in your team can go on the training, and you don't need to have to backfill their position while they take out 8 hours of their schedule. So yeah, that's it really.
Thanks, Jen. Yeah, I think that's a really good point around the flexible delivery there. And I'm really glad to hear that you're, speaking with your membership around how they can deliver flexibly. I think that if that's something, any of the attendees, if you're thinking about, how am I going to deliver a full day's worth of training to the people I might want to deliver the training to, if you're having any worries like that, definitely us at the Carbon Literacy Project and probably most of the Shareable course producing organizations would be happy to have a conversation with you, not only about what you could do, but also about how they've done it. Because a lot of the organizations that are here today on the panel are not just developing carbon literacy shareable courses for the wider sector, they're also delivering them internally for their staff and their people, and they will have insight on how that rollout has worked in a very practical and real sense. And I wanted to just echo something that Jen said as well around the fact that all of these shareable courses has been developed by sector organizations that understand the values and objectives of your cultural sector. So that's something to really bear in mind, I think, going into this work. Fab, thanks loads for that, Jen. Lara, my next question is for you. So your course, as well as a few of the other courses that we're introducing today, decided to use the museum's toolkit as a foundation for a new shareable course. Can you tell us a little bit about why you decided to do that and what that process has been like?
Yes. So for us, this started a few years ago when we were looking for training for our own staff in this area, and we organised for a trainer to come in and deliver us a day of carbon literacy training. And at that point, the sort of closest match course was the museum's toolkit. And it was a really informative, really engaging. I was there. I really enjoyed it. It was a great day. Probably some really good discussions about actions we could take as a library, and indeed one of the actions that came out of it, though, was, there's some really great synergies between sort of libraries and museums, between our carbon footprints. So, for example, both of us tend to have collections that we're caring for, and big parts of our carbon footprint may be around storage and sort of conservation and care of the collections. We're both tending to do things like engaging the public through events and exhibitions and displays. We've got public spaces that we're welcoming people into. We may well be sort of have buildings to maintain. So there were lots of areas in which we could sit there and go, oh yes, no, we can see how this applies to libraries. So it made it a really strong starting point. But then what we wanted to do was to take that museum's toolkit and then make it as relevant as possible to libraries so that people could see their organisations, their working life reflected in those case studies. So we did a bit of a shout out for project partners, and we got some librarians from different sectors, from public libraries, health libraries, academic libraries to join us. And also they came from across the UK. So we had partners from Wales, England, Scotland, all helping to create the course. And then we tried to gather some really great case studies about the good practice that's already going on in libraries to sort of showcase what's already happening. And there was a few other things that we felt we needed to bring out more in our version of the course. So I think something we wanted to sort of champion was libraries as a model for sustainable practice, because I think something about libraries, we're all about shared resources, we're about borrowing rather than owning, we're about community spaces, community services, and we're really sort of in a great position to support the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And those were all areas we really wanted to bring out in our version of the course and help librarians see how that fitted in to their working lives and how that could be a part of their actions going forwards. So that's some of the things we sort of did to sort of adapt the course to make it a bit more library specific. Also, the resources handout again, we do send out resources handout after they complete the course. And as Jennifer was saying, there are some great examples of things produced by other sectors that we very much link to, so things like the Theatre Green Book. But we've also been trying to make sure that there's strong links to good practice by libraries and to resources that libraries would find relevant. So, for example, we've added on reading lists for sort of climate collections, things like that to make it as helpful as possible for librarians.
Amazing. Thanks, Laura. That is, yeah, that's really interesting. And it kind of reminds me of what Jen was just saying around building on the values, bringing in the values and objectives of a sector. And I really love that you brought in the sort of sharing model value around libraries and you brought that into your course. So your course isn't just a rehash of the museum's toolkit with a couple of things different. It is an entirely sort of reimagined thing with the actual values and objectives and case studies brought in. And so it's really amazing to hear as well that you've built so completely on that original resource. It kind of reminds me as well of, I guess, the way that in the actual training, people are building on each other's knowledge. That's actually one of the best things that comes out of carbon literacy. So lots of people come in with maybe little nuggets of knowledge, but perhaps from disparate departments or different organizations. And because of the way that the conversation flows within carbon literacy training, people get their knowledge built upon and they come away with a sort of stronger foundation of climate knowledge. So thank you very much, Laura. That's really interesting. Helen, on a sort of similar note, you and National Archives partnered with other organisations to help you to help you develop the Archive Shareable course. Could you tell us a little bit about how that has worked and how you found that?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so I was one of those lucky days. That'd be amazing if we could also like move sector. And others also agreed. And within the archive sector leadership team in which I sit, work was already underway by the time that I joined. So I was delighted to be able to participate in this. So yeah, we have a lot of connections and knowledge about this sort of area, but at the same time, there were still other aspects that we felt, we really could do with some input from the sector that's already doing some really amazing things in this space. And so we worked with a consultant, Lorraine Finch. She's director of LFCP, and she's a sustainability consultant, so very specialised in this area. But she's also an accredited conservator, specialising in conservation and preservation of archive collections. And so she had that, specialist knowledge towards the archive aspect and the preservation of these kind of collections. In addition, though, she's also a carbon literacy trainer, now an accredited one, and she's created her own carbon literacy training, which is a conservation and collections version. So it's not a shareable course at the minute, as far as I'm aware, but and it just a huge amount of experience then that she could bring, not only on the content side, but also on the process of Lorraine, for all the amazing work that she did in helping us. But in addition to that, the Archives and Records Association's Environmental Sustainability Group, they were hugely valuable in shaping the training. We had regular meetings and content reviews, and they also coordinated collation of case studies from the sector. So we had some that the National Archives could bring, but they also were able to contribute this to this kind of tailoring of the course. And so I guess I ought to say, the National Archives we've organised it, we've developed it with these partners, and because of their input, it's definitely been a lot quicker, and it's come out a lot better than it would have done, I think. And really delighted that we passed the Carbon Literacy Project's accreditation first time round because of all of it. There is quite a bit involved in adapting, and yeah, I'm just so grateful to everybody who's participated. We are as an organisation, so the National Archives is rolling the training out. I do the admin side of it, and obviously we purchased the license to be able to do the training in kind of those were kind of all every time you do one of the courses, somebody throws in something new and like, oh, I need that too. So I'm gathering as we go along so that I can hopefully keep increasing and improving the resource document at the end, and tweak the slides at various points and things so we can continue to improve and keep it as relevant as possible for everybody.
Amazing. Thanks, Helen. You were breaking up ever so slightly towards the end there, but I think we caught most of that. And I think what we did miss is the thank you to Lorraine that I sort of got you getting. So if Lorraine, you are here, Helen did say thank you. But I think from that, I'm getting and reminded of the fact of how much work, especially for all of you, that has gone into these shareable courses for the developing organizations. Um, all the different partner conversations that you've had, the people that you've procured time from to help support the development, the work that's going to be continuing on an ongoing basis. So Helen, you were just saying about continuing to add information that you're actually learning on the carbon literacy training, or case studies or resources, and actually putting that into the materials. So again, that's a testament to one, the work that has already gone in, and secondly to the work that will continue to go into these materials to make sure that they are really fantastically relevant to your organization. So thank you very much, Helen, for that. Sarah, you're from Historic England, and you've been leading on the development of the Heritage Shareable course. The way that your rollout has worked has been quite specific, quite really interesting to see from external perspective. I was wondering if you could tell, I guess, the group a little bit more about how that rollout has worked and sort of the purpose behind it, I guess.
Yeah, thank you. So our course is also based on the museum's toolkit. We worked with Liz Power from Historic Buildings and Places to develop a heritage course. And as I'm sure a lot of the audience can appreciate, heritage is a bit of an amorphous term. So we're trying to catch archaeological organisations, historic houses, specialist heritage organisations. So it's a broad sweep. And so to do that, we haven't been delivering the training ourselves. We've been working with a group of fantastic trainers and some external membership bodies. So I'm going to do a roll call here because they've been absolutely vital in rolling this out to the sector. So this is Historic Houses, the Nautical Archaeology Society, Heritage Trust Network, the Heritage Alliance, Historic Buildings and Places, Chartered Institute for Archaeologists, and the Institute for Conservation. So a wide sweep of heritage organisations, and we've been working with them to roll out the training to their members. And we've also been doing some open courses. So any organisation that identifies as heritage have been able to take up the course as well. And I should just say, Historic England themselves have also been rolling it out to our staff, which means we're actually a bronze organisation, and Harriet's been working really hard on that internally. But the shareable course now, we're obviously working more towards getting it out there. When we were offering the course via the membership organisations, we were offering it to organisations to send 1 or 2 members of staff on the course. And I think Ali mentioned in her video the ripple effect, and the hope was that that ripple effect would mean that they would then take it on within their organisation to spread the message of carbon literacy and get their organisations trained. And that actually has been happening quite a lot, which is fantastic. We're continuing to work with our host organisations, but we're also, as Helen said, we're updating the slides with stuff that we learn on the courses ourselves, our trainers feedback on stuff that we can include on case study slides and that kind of thing.
Amazing. Thanks, Sarah. Yeah, it's been really fantastic to see, just from our perspective at the Carbon Literacy Project, how successful this rollout has been, and this partnership that you developed with all of these sort of membership bodies in the heritage sector, that have sort of taken on carbon literacy and been rolling it out over the last sort of 18 months, I guess. It's been really fantastic to see. And you raised a couple of things around Historic England's success. So you were a bronze CLO, which is a carbon literate organization, which is our organizational accreditation, which is something we'll actually come to in a little bit. I think Phoebe's going to be talking about CLO. And you also talked about, the fact that having 1 or 2 people go on one of these open courses then allows them to deliver the training internally. And that's, again, something that we're going to come to in a bit with Phoebe around, what are the actual practical steps to becoming a carbon literacy trainer with one of these courses in your organization. So thank you very much, Sarah. I now got another question for Lara. National Library of Scotland has created a carbon literacy shareable course for the library sector. What benefits do you think that this course could and will bring to the library sector in the UK?
I suppose, first of all, we hope this is going to provide relevant, inspiring, engaging training. There was a survey done with Green Libraries Partnership and Arts Council England about just over 2 years ago of libraries asking, whether they felt confident in this area, whether they felt the staff had the knowledge required, which came back very strongly that libraries were looking for sort of reliable training in this area that they could cascade to their staff. So yeah, starting point, we hope this is a good course that people will find interesting and enjoyable to do. I think in particular, we really want this to be something relevant, something that people feel inspired by. One of the things we've tried to do with our case studies is we've very much tried to make sure we've got a range of scale in there. So there are a few big capital project examples, and obviously when it comes to our buildings, sometimes that is what's required. But we were really keen to make sure that we also had case studies in there which were maybe about maybe reprioritizing what we're already doing, about reviewing policies, procedures, about partnership working, collaborating with maybe other local organisations in order to achieve change, that not everything required a big budget initial outlay, so that librarians would feel that this was something that they could carry out in their library, that this was something they could take forward with colleagues, as things were now. So that was something we felt was really important to make it feel relevant and make it feel that people felt like they could take action at the end of the course. Personally, I find it's been so positive delivering this training to groups of librarians. We've been really keen that the training sessions we do, they're open to librarians from a whole range of sectors. Everyone's welcome to book on, and it's just been so brilliant listening to experience from colleagues working in different sectors. And it's made for really rich discussions when we do the course, and we've very much made sure that our course, there's lots of points where we stop to discuss, to share ideas, to share our experiences. And I think that helps with sort of collaboration going forward, increases networking with others across the sector. Something else I think we really want libraries to do more of is to shout about their green carbon handprints. So this is all the brilliant work that libraries do to support sustainable communities. And we think that's maybe a really important message. Funding, I think we all know funding can be really tight for arts and heritage organisations, and we think that it's really important that we talk about how we can support sustainable action, how the services we provide are helping our communities be greener. So I think that's something else we really hope comes out of the course, that people feel more ready to talk about the good work they're already doing and to share that with maybe funding bodies, with their community, and put that into things like funding bids for the future. I suppose ultimately just we want lots of cool library actions to come out of this, and lots of great new actions for the future that to inspire people and that we can be adding in as case studies for future versions of the course.
Amazing. Thanks, Laura. It's really amazing to hear that you've been really considering the libraries of all different sizes in the development of your course and making sure that there is a relevant case studies for all different kinds of experiences. I guess it kind of resonates with the fact that when you finish a carbon literacy course and you write your actions, we're always looking for actions that are relevant to your level of agency within an organization. So we're not asking people to necessarily do like the biggest thing in the world that they actually maybe couldn't possibly do. And we want people to be thinking about, where do I actually have agency, and what could I actually do with that agency? And I really think that your course has been designed around that sort of idea around what different people and different organizations can do. And I really like the value of trying to encourage people to talk more and shout more about the fantastic things that they're already doing. So that's great to hear. Thanks, Laura. I'm now going to actually pass to my colleague Phoebe Rhodes, who is our Cultural Sector Officer, and she's going to be leading the latter half of the panel and the webinar. So thank you, guys.
Hi everyone, thanks Jack. Yeah, as Jack said, I'm the Cultural Sector Officer for the Carbon Literacy Project, helping to, advocate for people to use these wonderful courses that have been produced and being used by our panellists that are here today. So I'm going to move on to Tally, who we've actually not heard from yet. So Tally was actually part of one of the first theatres, Nottingham Playhouse, to actively roll out the Theatre Shareable course produced by Bristol Vic. And Tally, I just want to say, you've been actively using a shareable course that we've had available for the past year and a half. So what has your experience been so far? And are there any outcomes that are particularly of note to you?
Thanks, Phoebe. Overall, our experience at Nottingham Playhouse has just been really, really positive. To give you a little bit of context, we're a regional producing theatre. We've got around 60 core staff, and we also have a lot of freelancers and other 0 hours staff. So for us, it all started with our deputy production manager, Jill, who was tasked with producing a production to what was then Theatre Green Book version 1 industry standards, and she realised that she needed to gain more knowledge about climate change to lead on those productions. And we also had the impetus across the theatre to upskill all of our teams more generally to meet our Arts Council England environmental responsibilities under the Let's Create 10-year plan. The materials that we've used, the shareable materials, are really accessible. They're really informative. We found them really, really, really good. And in the summer of 2023, we rolled out the course to all of our teams. We delivered it via sort of upskilling our Green Team members. And we had a targeted training plan where we rather crazily delivered training every week across that summer 2023 period. We made the course part of our mandatory training, so every new member of staff was encouraged to get on that as quickly as possible. And we also felt it was really important for our freelance creatives to have access to affordable training. So we offered it to all our associated freelance staff as well. And we've kind of dropped back now to quarterly sessions just to keep that ticking over within our organisation. In terms of outcomes, the training's had a really wide reach. Internally, it's been given to everybody really, all our media and comms team, the production, participation, operations, front of house cleaning, all the way up to our board members. We've had 97 participants certified, which is super. We've just sent off another 6, so fingers crossed if they all pass, that'll be over 100 people. We've actually trained 133. So you can see from the numbers that not everybody who has attended necessarily went on to get certified for kind of various different reasons, which is something we might look into a little bit more later down the line. We've trained staff from theatres across the country. So we've had people from Birmingham, from Leicester, Derby, Plymouth. all over the country really come and see our course in action, and then that's given them the confidence once they've got their certification and they've done their train the trainer course, to then take that back to their organisation and sort of think about rolling it out there. We've had some really super pledges made in terms of outcomes which have driven the culture change within our theatre, but also wider within the sector, and have also driven lots of excellent carbon impact reductions. So we've had lots of waste reduction pledges, reuse and recycling of materials on our in-house productions. One pledge was to invest in an electric van, which we've just managed to purchase. And we've had some really creative ideas. We had a poet who came along and written some climate-based poems, and then gone on to set up a night to share those and to start wider discussions within the creative sort of poetry sector, which is a really nice kind of knock-on ripple effect. And the last thing, running the course has enabled us to achieve the Carbon Literate Organisation's Silver level award. So having that award, it's some really good independent verification as an organisation of our commitment to carbon literacy and our commitment as a business to the low carbon agenda. So that kind of positively reflects on us as well.
That's great. I'm such an advocate for the theatre sector. Like I take lead on it at the Carbon Literacy Project, so it's great to hear like all the work that's happening. I think it's really interesting that you also touched upon how you weren't just aiming to deliver to like your green team. You really wanted to disseminate the materials to not just the green team, but across all roles, including freelancers that are coming into the theatre. And that's just like another great step showing that carbon literacy isn't just for your green team, but also to kind of provide that base level climate knowledge to all roles, to kind of integrate any kind of sustainability goals into every team at every organization. And that's great, and that's definitely part of another reason for why you've retained your silver CLO, which is another amazing commitment to carbon literacy, which we also have, which I will touch upon later, which Jack mentioned. So thank you very much, Tally. And we are moving on to Sarah. So, as you mentioned before, you've said that you have such a range of heritage organisations assisting with the delivery of carbon literacy training, as well as your own internal rollout. So we understand that you've been collating some of those actions together. So we just wanted to know, sorry, I've lost where I am, what kind of actions you're seeing, and if you could share any of those with the group.
Yeah, sure. I'd love to. I think one of the ones that we've been one of the actions, but we've seen it many times, is the commitment to actually share the carbon literacy message across organisations, because we only offered the course to 1 or 2 people from an organisation, and our hope was that they would then use that as a sort of seed to get into their organisation, and that has been coming up a lot in pledges, which is fantastic. But we've had lots of really, really diverse pledges that we've really enjoyed looking at, and I think it speaks to the sort of diversity of organisations that we've had on the courses. A proposal to set up an all history carbon reduction checklist, which is something I really like the sound of. And then they're going to consult across the whole oral history sector with that. And it was actually a journal editor that came up with that idea. Things like creating peer-to-peer heritage carbon reduction hub has been done and is now active. So that's there for discussion across the sector and sharing ideas and resources. We've had somebody who is part of a local community heritage organisation, but actually is also a lecturer in archaeology in one of the bigger universities, and he runs field courses, archaeological field courses. So he's now in the process of setting up or creating a typical field course carbon footprint that he will share with his colleagues, and they can look at what they can do to reduce their carbon footprint on the field courses that they run for students. I'm just trying to, I mean, obviously we've had so many, we've actually trained over 600 people now at over 500 organizations. And as I was putting everything together for today, I was thinking, there's so many, which ones am I going to talk about? Ones where people are committing to training their staff, trustees and volunteers, which I think is fantastic. And then the ripple effect from that. Quite a few people have gone on to become carbon literacy trainers, so that they can train their local groups and share the knowledge. I've got to say this because I think this is really ace, but we actually have somebody who their pledge is they are using the heritage course to create an Italian version. And I know they've been in discussion with Jack about that. So that's really exciting. And just spreading the message. A lot of the group pledges that we get are spreading the message. But everything very diverse, very different. There's been a lot of talk of, I think somebody mentioned it earlier, electric vehicles, looking into electric vehicles, and even looking into using electric bikes. We've actually got this as a case study in our course now, that one of the organizations we trained, they now have electric bikes that they use to go to archaeological watching briefs or move around their samples in their different offices. So just practical things as well as spreading the knowledge. It's a real mixture, and really hard to say it all in 5 minutes.
Yeah, it's great to hear that even from such a diverse range of organizations that you've been able to train through the various organizations that you're training providers, that kind of they're all on the same wavelength, that peer-to-peer element of carbon literacy is really important, and that they really value that, because we always, like as Jack said at the start of our presentation, that peer-to-peer element of carbon literacy is one of the pinnacles that people find really useful, because when you're learning from your manager or someone who's from your sector who really knows what they're talking about, you really, take that information on and really start to listen and think, what can I do in my role that's really going to help this sector? And like that collaboration in the cultural sector is always being there. So once one Historic England or heritage organisation has that idea and then can share it amongst other people, it's a really important and really great aspect that I think you've really touched upon there really well, Sarah. And thank you for pulling out those examples for us to hear and share with us. So, Helen, I know you were struggling with your connection, but my next question is for you. But we know that you've been running some pilot training for your course, as it's a new release for us at the Carbon Literacy Project. So do you have any kind of insights, not insults, results and feedback for us?
Yeah, thank you. So we managed to finish it last year, which was great, and get accredited, and then launched officially at the ARA conference in August. And we'd done some pilots sort of just before that, and that really helped us in how we're shaping us for rolling out now to the sector more generally. So we've done 4 courses since then, which is nice, and we've got more coming up. We just don't have the dates just yet. But the pilot was really, really great opportunity to see what people felt about it at first and how we might be able to change things. So we did specially try and reach out to a wide range of roles within archives, and also different scales and types of archive organization as well when we were like running the pilot. And I think that was really helpful because of, there is such breadth, isn't there, within all of these sectors. But it was really, really positive what we got back. And people really enjoyed it. And how we done it was with the 4 modules. We actually rolled it out for the pilots all in one day online, all 4 modules. And in the end, the feedback was that that is quite intense. And we've heard before it can be quite difficult getting one whole day out as well of a schedule. So in the end, we have changed that for when we do the rollout to the sector. We've split it into 2 half days. So we're doing modules 1 and 2 on a Tuesday, typically Tuesday morning, and then 3 and 4 on a Thursday morning. And it gives a bit of time in between, which has been quite helpful, I think, for participants to just mull over what you've learned, and it's still fresh in your mind on the second part, but you've had time to kind of digest it a bit, and I think that's really helped. And having the discussions, that was another thing that kind of came out from it. The fact that you could learn from one another and hear about other people's experiences, and the fact you could be totally different roles in the organization as well, has been really helpful. So yeah, people really enjoyed that, and they felt that the level of knowledge was really good too. So it was a good holistic introduction to the subject, they said, which is brilliant and really interesting within that. And I think even if you know a lot already, I think it's a course that still works very well, because it just means that that everybody else is talking the same language as well, and there's such a lot of development that happens in this area too, that you might need to be more up to date on a certain bit, and this is what can help you, and so I think really the course is kind of for everybody, and anybody within an archive or special collections organization. You don't have to be like an archivist to do it, it's anybody. So yeah, it went really well, really enjoyed it. We were doing about 12 to 15 people in the online sessions, and that worked well, because we found in the time that we allotted for it, everybody had a chance to speak, I think without feeling rushed. So we felt that was a good number, and so that's what we've taken forward for the rollout. So we're doing about 15, maybe 16 people will do the next lot for, because we often find somebody can't come last minute and then we can't fill the space. So trying to maximize our impact as well by getting as many people on, but also ensuring that people have that chance to engage with the others as much as possible. I think one quote maybe to put from somebody, I really like this one. They said it's challenging, thought-provoking, emotional, and realistic about what could be possible to help tackle climate change in our working and personal lives. It encourages us to work together and use our voices as much as possible to share and connect, and ultimately improve things for the better. And I thought that was a really wonderful bit of feedback from one of our pilot attendees. So I think, yeah, I think that's everything for the minute, but I do keep tweaking, as I said before. So even like with the emails that we send out to participants before and afterwards, I'm kind of tweaking to help make sure it's as plain sailing for them as possible. They know that there's work ahead of it, and they know that there's a bit of work afterwards. And we get the certificates out as quick as I'm able to do once they come through. And it's been fantastic to see sort of the range of objects that people bring along to talk about at the beginning, and how, where they are with their understanding of this area. And then the pledges that they come out with at the end. It's great to hear all the examples that Sarah had, because yeah, it's just so diverse what comes out, and I keep learning each time that I'm seeing those, to be honest. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Helen. And like you said, that quote is a really good kind of embodies kind of what carbon literacy is and what we aim to do. And it is a really good quote to have. And I'd like to, just pull out something that you mentioned about the flexibility of it. And like you say, we've kind of had that feedback ourselves, and I'm sure amongst the panelists here, you probably had that feedback about 8 hours being intense to all doing what at one time. And we completely have the flexibility with these models that we have in place. Like you say, quite a lot of people do tend to go for the 2 half days, but if you're dependent on team capacity and someone's ill or someone can't facilitate the training, you can split it up again into the 4 modules, into two in each place. We definitely allow for that flexible schedule to allow for that team capacity to change if that ever happens. So it's really, I'm just wanted to pull that out for attendees to know. So thank you very much, Helen. Jen, my next question is for you. So we know that you've used some of the sports and museums toolkit content to kind of help with the production of your shareable course. So can you tell us a bit about how you managed to tailor those materials to fit the audience that you're hoping to suit?
Yeah, thank you. It's really interesting, because sports and museum toolkits are obviously quite different from one another, but actually there's there's elements that are very similar. So I think again we brought all of it back to, okay, for each of those toolkits, we looked at, okay, how can we make this relevant to charities and social enterprises? Again, really going back to our roots as a membership association, and also looking at, okay, we know that the charities that we work with, they usually work in partnership with local authorities, so bring in that element, and then they usually manage one or more public culture or leisure venues as well. So actually bringing back in the venue and facility management was one of the key things that we did. And I know that this has been said before, so I'm not going to embellish on it too much, but the ripple effect and sphere of influence exercise from the museum's toolkit was really good. And we also, we kept that one in, and actually adopted that, and actually again expanded on that and brought that back to actually all of the organizations that we work with, they're community organizations, and like bring that back again to your charitable objectives and your role within a place and within a community, and actually looking at that. So that's one of the things that I think all of us have said is that's a really good exercise. But then we are in the lucky position as well that as a membership association, we actually already had an existing environment and sustainability networking group for our members. So we could use a lot of experience and expertise from our membership when we were building this course. So we added in a lot around the main emission sources within the public culture and leisure sector, again, primarily around energy management of venues, because that's a key topic. But we could also do a lot of different illustrations on the impact of climate change, like flooding damage and the cost of that. For example, we actually had that information to hand, so we could put in, local net zero strategies, but also audience and community engagement and things like installation of solar panels, new waste management techniques as well. And actually, again, the cost of installation, but also the return on investment from both a carbon and a monetary perspective. So that was really helpful for us. And because we work across public culture and leisure, so not one type of facility, we actually include a lot of different examples. So we have examples in there from theatres and libraries, but also from outreach community work and from a swimming pool and a leisure centre perspective. So it's very, very diverse. And we've actually found from our learners, when they give us feedback, that they actually found that really helpful, because it helps helps with that, I guess, that critical thinking, that reflection of, oh, actually they're doing that, but we could do that. We could do that too. So and actually we've had an arts organization actually say that it was actually really helpful to see examples from leisure, and I was like, oh, okay, that's that's really good to hear. But I think the final thing from us is that because we are a membership association that work across England, Scotland and Wales, we really tried to make sure that we included examples and legislation and policy from all the three nations that we work in. So net zero targets from Wales and Scotland are given equal weight to the UK government, England net zero targets as well. And examples that we include in our course come from organizations across those three nations as well, which learners have found really helpful.
That's great, Jen. And it's great that you considered kind of all legislations across your sector and beyond in involvement with your case studies, and to just engage all those people that are coming onto your course. In I'll just move on quickly to Tally for my next question, just because I'm a bit cautious of time. Um, all shareable courses have, customizable elements, as kind of Jen's touched upon about, integrating different case studies as she's gone along, and same with Sarah when different actions have come up, integrating those case studies. Now, can you tell us a bit about how you've adapted the materials, the shareable course materials, and to suit you when you've been delivering?
Yeah, I mean, our course has got the three main elements, obviously, the science side of things, and then the impact and the action. It's sections 2 and 3, the impacts and the actions section, that we've customized more so than the science. And we found that customizing the course helps the people that come on the course feel real ownership over what they're learning, because we're talking about where they live, and where they work, and what they do. In the impact section, we talk about the impact that our business has on the environment, and we talk about our scope 1, 2 and 3 impacts. We also share how we record those impacts and how we report them to Arts Council England, sort of as a this is how we've been doing this. And we talk about the local impacts of climate change for the Nottinghamshire area, such as flooding, and we talk about the need for adaptation in response to increasing city temperatures. So again, that real local context for us, and we cover the sort of community context and legislation for this area. So talking about initiatives like Carbon Neutral 28, which is our citywide goal for carbon neutrality by 2028. So that's the impact section, and then in the action section, we talk about what we've done at Nottingham Playhouse and what we're planning to do and hoping to do in the future. So we include that formally by talking about our Arts Council investment principle plan and our environmental goals and our action plan for meeting those goals. There's also quite a lot in there about Theatre Green Book, which, as you probably all know, is our industry standard for sustainability. So we're signposting people really to that initiative and then showing them practically how we're using that in our context and how we're working as sustainably as possible at our theatre. We talk about the 3 different Theatre Green Book sections, the productions, the operations and the building sections, because they're all relevant for us. And we do go into quite a lot of detail, hoping that then enables people to see how they can integrate Theatre Green Book practices, which are the circular economy practices and the low carbon practices, into their theatre, whether or not they're a big organisation or a freelancer working just on their own. And 2 last points, because I know you're running out on time. We try to encourage the attendees to think about working within the context of climate change as a creative challenge and as a new set of parameters that they're working through or sort of working within, which they can work within in a very solution focused way through collaboration and creativity. And we also touch on the power that the creative industries have to accelerate climate action and how we've tried to do that at Nottingham Playhouse through our programming and other activities that we've been doing in the last few years.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that, Tally. It's an amazing contribution that you've had so far. And like you say, including like kind of local context on kind of the opposite side of the scale to what we were saying before in terms of having, you know, the UK legislation, but having that local context of you delivering internally does give people that kind of ownership over their actions and creating stuff in the environment that they work in to kind of make everything better. So it's great to hear that as well. And Simon, kind of on the opposite end of that, you know, you created a course from scratch for your audience. So can you tell us a bit about the development of your course and how you plan to keep it updated?
Yeah, I should probably just explain what GMAST is. So GMAST is a network of over 70 cultural organisations working together across Greater Manchester. And what brings us together is culture, whatever the flavour and wherever the money comes from. I guess kind of we've been on a carbon literacy journey for quite a long time. I think the very first version that we developed was a collaboration between us and Manchester Metropolitan University, who've been really pivotal in the carbon literacy delivery here in Manchester, and Home Arts Centre, which is a multidisciplinary space here in Manchester. And it's been really interesting to see, kind of particularly with Home, you know, how they integrated it, how they used it to develop kind of their policy and action as a kind of organisation, how they took it and made it specific to the different teams within the organisation. And over the years, kind of, there's been different sorts of versions, and what's particular about this version, I think, is that we've really, you know, there's always been a real spirit of cross-pollination here, and we freely shared our course with Museum Development Northwest when they were developing the museums toolkit, and we've always kind of wanted our materials to be out there, and so we've created a place-based version that really talks to, in the way that Tali was speaking about, our kind of local climate targets and how they kind of manifest and what's meaningful, across Greater Manchester. It's I guess what's probably most kind of important, I think, is that we've integrated. We were asked as a sector to respond to our local climate strategy, and so we had to come up with something. And so we came up with a kind of our own sort of framework. And forgive me, I can never remember. There's too many things for me to remember without looking at it. But we kind of look at kind of organizational kind of elements, sort of, what's understanding policy, what's policy that's relevant to the organization, that's external, and then also developing your kind of internal policy. Understanding your position, your carbon, what your carbon budget, your contribution, your impact, planning to reduce that and to learn more about it, exploring and changing your practice in the way that, again, that's been talked about in the Theatre Green Book, or kind of, actions across the different sectors. Your people, inside, outside, your audiences, your participants, and as I've mentioned, place. And then what the sector is really good at, and that's to innovate, to imagine, and help us all imagine, to inspire, to inform, to include. And that, I think, is our greatest impact within kind of a local setting. And at the heart of that is kind of action, or low and lower carbon cultural experiences. So I really wanted to kind of, Alison Criddle, you heard from in the museum's development movie, she's been really kind of a big part of this. And then Robin, kind of, who's an artist, kind of also has contributed to this. So I think it's really kind of interesting when you kind of have different voices and kind of perspectives coming into the training. And we're kind of, at the moment, it's out there. The reason why it's kind of a shareable course is kind of, if a place-based course is of interest to you, and this course is useful to your development of it, then please use it. And then for everybody who participates with GMOS, the course is free to use across Greater Manchester. And in terms of how we're going to keep it up to date, I guess one of the things that I'm really thinking about at the moment is kind of, where we find ourselves globally, to do with to do with the Paris Agreement, how kinds of targets are kind of developing, how our understanding of climate and environment has really kind of evolved, and how we might really encourage kind of creative thinking around this, but to also help us, help us explore and live with our feelings around this, because it's a very challenge. We're living in very challenging times.
Okay, Simon, that's great, and it's lovely to hear kind of your local context, and that you've kind of created a course for the Greater Manchester area, and that your aim is to kind of, it's not just that it's available for your membership courses, but kind of opening up to other areas for, adaptation, which is fantastic. And it's great that you kind of created this resource from scratch and want it to be shared out to everyone who kind of needs that base of an arts organisation. So I just want to thank all of the panelists for coming today, and for your contributions. And we're going to wrap up the panel there and go back to our presentation. So thank you so much, everyone, for your contributions. And a few people will be sticking around for the Q&A at the end. Obviously, we're running a little bit tight on time, so if anyone is wanting to stick around for some questions at the end, we're more than happy to go over and answer those for you, or pick it up on email after. So if you've liked what you've heard from all of our panelists, we're going to go on to how you would then access one of these shareable courses that they've created and are using. So we, first of all, would like to encourage people to contact myself and Jack at culture@carbonliteracy.com to arrange an introductory meeting where we'll go through and discuss carbon literacy, the processes involved, the administration in terms of delivering a course. And then we'll ask you to complete a jot form. And again, this is purely an administrative process, just so we know who we're kind of delivering and giving out the shareable course materials to, so both organisations have control over that. You'll be sent the materials by either myself and Jack at the Carbon Literacy Project or the organisation that produced the course. Once the jot form's been filled in, it sends a notification to both parties. And if you're sat here thinking, I'm a freelancer, I'm part of a training body, what can I do? Then just get in contact with us, because some of these shareable courses are accessible for freelance training bodies. And you can just get in contact with us to kind of get information upon that afterwards. Now, in terms of the costs associated with delivering a shareable course, as Jack's mentioned at the start of this presentation, and that Sarah's gone into and Helen have gone into in terms of the actions collected from participating in the training, all carbon literacy training ends with learners completing evidence action forms, which are sent to us to process. Now, this is a per person fee to take into this process, and it's £10 to £30, and it's dependent on organisational turnover. And public sector organisations and small organisations are capped at £10 per head. Access costs for the shareable courses vary. Most are free to access, and the development has been funded. For those that aren't, the access fee goes towards development, upkeep, and advocacy work and updating those materials. Ultimately, all of these options are a very affordable way to roll out carbon literacy training within your organisation. Now, in order to deliver the materials internally to your organisation, we ask of these three things. So to become carbon literate yourself, which involves attending an open training session and gaining your carbon literacy certificate. The second is to attend our free 90-minute Delivering Successful Carbon Literacy workshop, which we host monthly at the project, and we'll be sending links to this afterwards if anybody is interested. And the third is to access a shareable course, which is already answered from your introductory meeting that you'll have with ourselves or the organisations producing the shareable course materials. And then you're free to begin training once you've familiarised yourself. We're always on hand to help with anything, as are the shareable course producers. And we've spoken about this with our shareable course leaders and producers about the kind of rollout with carbon literacy. So this kind of allows, if you want to then train your senior management team as your first cohort of training, as long as they attend the Delivering Successful Carbon Literacy workshop and have access to the materials, they can then start delivering carbon literacy to their own team, so it doesn't just rely on one main person delivering carbon literacy on a regular basis. It allows for quicker dissemination of those materials within your organisation. Now, just to touch on this rather quickly, it's been mentioned before with Sarah Russo and Historic England becoming CLO Bronze and Nottingham Playhouse becoming CLO Silver. Now, this is our CLO, our Carbon Literacy Organisation, is an organisational accreditation by the Carbon Literacy Project, which shows a substantial commitment to carbon literacy. It's a voluntary optional accreditation and it is paid for, but it is a visible badge that demonstrates your commitment to carbon literacy training, and it supports the development of a carbon literacy workforce. In order to move up the tiers, it covers aspects such as training, impact, and advocacy. And if you want some more information, just feel free to contact us at culture@carbonliteracy.com. Of course, as I mentioned before, we've kind of hit the 12:30 mark, so we're happy for anyone to stay around and answer any questions if they're able to, and we will cover those. And if you have to run off, that's absolutely fine. We will keep the questions on file and answer them over email. So just wrapping up the session, thank you so much for attending today and thank you to our panelists. As we've mentioned, if you have any questions or you'd like to have an introductory meeting and have access to these materials, please contact us at culture@carbonliteracy.com and you can find also more information at our website if you hit on the culture sector to kind of access those information about the materials and the course creators themselves. We will also share the contact details of the speakers and the panelists that we've had here today, and also a recording of this webinar with all attendees in our communications following the webinar. Keep an eye out for any open carbon literacy courses in your sector. Becoming carbon literate is the first step to becoming a trainer and being able to, start that dissemination of carbon literacy materials in your organisation. So if you use the QR code on the screen, which we'll keep there, you can join our mailing list, which is where we, contact everybody about any updates in the sector. And our newsletter goes out on there with any open carbon literacy training and any news from our shareable course leaders and producers. So I'll just leave this QR code there and thank you everybody for attending today. And if you have any questions and want to stick around, please do so. But thank you very much to everyone for attending and hope to hear from anyone who's interested soon.